welcome to my channel. I'm Em. I wanted to share about some strange things that happened to me when I first moved to San Francisco. I had just moved to SF, and I was a new gal in the new city, and I felt like Mary Tyler Moore, you know, when she throws the hat off. So I had moved all of my stuff in my apartment, and I didn't have like anything for dinner, so I decided to get some Chinese carryout. First mistake. So I went to this place that was close by to where I live, and I took their Muni, which is their public transportation. It's like an above ground cable car. And they have one that's below ground. That's why I said above ground. And so it's their version of Metro or the subway. And I took that and I got some General Tso's. Everything was fine. I caught the train back. And when I got on the train, the first thing that should have made me think twice was that every train car was empty. And these are 8 train cars, just completely empty. But I was like, whatever, I want to get back to my place. I want to eat my food while it's hot. I got on. Now, I chose my seat, and I didn't even think twice that there was no one on this rush hour train. I was riding along, and a few stops later, this guy gets on. Now, when he got on, he was wearing a leather jacket, and he looked like Charlie Murphy. Not Charlie Murphy from Dave Chappelle, Rick James skits. Charlie Murphy in everyday life with a leather jacket. So he gets on and he walks through all the car trains, 8 of them, and he stops in the one that I'm in. And he looks around and he sits a few seats behind me. So I'm like, whatever. I just mind my business. I'm like, I want to get back and eat my food. So then he gets up and he walks and sits next to me. And I'm like, why, sir? Why? With all these available cars, all the seats, you're going to sit next to me. So the first thing I thought was, okay, he's going to ask me for some of my food. Okay, true stories. Those are things I witnessed myself being shared or asked for. So this guy sits down, and I'm like, okay, he's going to ask me for food. And so he was looking at me, even though he had his headphones and music playing, and he had intense eyes like Charlie Murphy. He wasn't smiling intensely, but his eyes were intense. So I looked over, and then he just started bobbing his head like this is some good music. So I was like, I can't really hear. I can just hear the music. So I started bobbing my head like, okay, whatever, great. So then I look straight ahead, and I'm thinking, why is this guy sitting next to me? He didn't ask for food. He just seemed to want me to co-sign his music. And I don't even know what his music is. It's probably exactly the type of music you would picture Charlie Murphy listening to, okay? And so we're riding along, everything's normal, and I'm looking straight ahead, just holding my food like this food is for me. And I start hearing the music a little louder, like he's turned it up. And I look down, and he has his arms in his jacket, but they're covered. They're in the inside of his leather coat like this. And his music is getting louder, so I'm like, okay, he's turning it up. That's why his hands are both in his jacket. You know what I'm saying? And so he's bobbing his head again, but this time it's like all these sounds like and so I'm still, mind you, looking straight ahead at this point, and I'm like, okay, what is he listening to? Because as the minutes progressed on, it sounded it sounded honestly like the ad-libs or the background vocals from Michael Jackson's Remember the Time. It was like, So I was like, okay, yeah, it's his hands, jacket. He's exhaling, inhaling loudly, doing all this stuff. So I'm like, all right, sir. So then after the they got just too much, I looked over at him because I didn't want to look over and down and see something, that I did not want to see. And so I look over at him, and he's not looking at me. Like, his head is turned to the left, and it's like he's making these kissing, like, sounds and faces. So I'm like, okay, what is, it's no one there. This is still an empty car train. What's going on? And then it's like the sounds like, like when people are getting really deep into kissing, and I turn and I like kind of like, okay, try to look in the side, but I still can't see anything. So then he finally stops his like kissing, moaning, breathing deeply sounds, and he leans back somewhat. And well, okay, I'll tell you. He leaned back, and on his shoulder was an iguana. Yes, iguana. This iguana was like this big. I don't know where it came from. I'm guessing because like whatever he was in his jacket for, I thought he was like moving his hands doing something, but I guess it was actually holding the iguana. And I turn and look, and sitting on top of the leather coat is this thing looking at me. This thing that looks like this. Okay. Now, guys, to paint this picture for you clearly, he looked like is it Fizzle? Mrs. Fizzle from the Magic School Bus? That's how he looked, walking around with this iguana on his shoulder. This thing was like this big on his shoulder, but I was still like kind of taken aback for that moment because like the iguana wasn't moving. It was like dead still, dead still. So I'm like, okay, this has to be like a prop, a toy, something like that. Here he is looking like Charlie Murphy, but also sitting up here looking like Miss Fizzle from the Magic School Bus with the iguana on his shoulder. And so he's leaned back. He's enjoying bobbing his head to his music still. I guess he's had his French kiss makeout session with this iguana. And I'm just looking. I'm not even like pretending to look straight on anymore. I'm like looking straight at him like, what is going on? So I'm holding the look so long and watching the iguana too because it's not moving. So I said, okay, this is a toy. This is some like costume he has, because people wear costumes in San Francisco as well. And so I was like, he's just trying to be funny, trying to be weird. And so I look straight ahead again, and he starts making the remember the time like sounds. So I look, and he's doing things to the iguana again. And I look over, and this time like the iguana's mouth is open. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is real. And when I say this thing is real, let me give you some visuals how it looked. Okay, and when I tell you that I had such a strong reaction on the inside when that iguana opened its mouth, like I didn't like do a scream or anything on the outside, but like on the inside, this is what I was saying.
Yes.
We don't want no devils in the house.
Yes,
we
Lord.
want the
Yes,
Lord.
Kanye's
Yes.
references. We want the Lord. We don't want no iguanas up in here. So I was like, okay, I gotta get out of here. I don't want to scream out loud. Because on top of that, I have weird phobias, okay? And one of my weird phobias are animals that are too still and then they suddenly move. So this exactly fit it. It had been super still, but then it started moving all over the place. And I was like, snake, lizard, iguana, whatever you are, makeout session, whatever this guy's doing, I need to get out of there. And so I motioned like to get out the seat, even though it was nowhere near for the time for the train to make its next stop. I motioned like I need to get out the seat, and he wasn't letting me out the seat. And so I was like, kind of touching him, like I guess because he was like focusing on what his next makeout session was going to be, his next iguana French kiss. And so I kind of poked him, and he turned his music off, and he looked at me like I had just stopped his intense love session, his private, intimate train moment. And he looked at me like, this is completely normal. What's your problem? Do you need something? And so I look at him, and then I look at the iguana, and I look at him, and I look at the iguana, and he catches me doing both. And so then he turns, and that's when he gave me the full on Charlie Murphy, all teeth smile. And he was like, his name is Charlie. Yes, this iguana lover of his, he had given a name. I guess they were in a same-sex and non-species relationship, and his iguana's name is Charlie. And so I was like, okay, yep, Charlie. I hopped out the seat. I pushed past him and Charlie. The train had not got to the stop yet. I stood right in front of the doors, waited till it got to its stop, waited for them to open, went straight out the train, and did not look back. Now, mind you, this was not my stop to where I live. This was nowhere. I didn't know what this stop was. And because I was new, I was like, dang, I'm going to have to figure out how to get home from here. I'm like, I'm going to call an Uber. I'm going to do something else. But I don't need anything like that in my life ever again. Comment below if you rode public transportation and crazy things have happened to you.